Thank you. I know that you think you've heard it all about regulation, but we definitely have a bit more to add. So I'm going to welcome my panel. If you can come and join me on stage, please. Yes, please. Yes. Excellent. Great stuff. So yes, regulation. We've definitely got a few points to add on regulation. So last 2 years have seen definitely a rapid growth in deploying of environmental regulation. We've seen these not just across Europe, but now we are adding the latest acronym to the soup of acronyms with SDR in the UK, adding a bit more, obviously, of a complication into the mix, which we love, and including in the mix, we also have the anti-greenwashing rule, which applies to every single organization in the financial sector. So we are seeing a lot of these new regulations come in place, and we are just trying to figure out whether they are genuinely supporting the growth? Are they moving in? Are they aiding us in to get to the right direction? So for that, I'm joined today by incredible leaders in the space of the sustainable ecosystem to really understand the impact of regulation. And more importantly, I think, because we tend to focus quite a lot on the challenges that regulation brings to us, but let's try to focus, although we will touch obviously on the challenges, let's try to be positive and think about the opportunities that regulation brings into this landscape. So we'll start with brief intros and then we'll dive right into the discussion. So Lesley.
Hi, my name is Lesley. I'm the founder and CEO of UImpact. After a decade in banking, I took the leap of faith and founded UImpact with the mission to mobilize private capital towards sustainability in a human-centric way. So my perspective in this panel is really focusing on how do we turn this regulatory burden on sustainable finance into upside opportunities. Thank you for having me.
I'm Myfanwy Neville. I'm one of the partners and board member at BKL. We were one of the first B Corp accounting firms in the UK, in the top 50 of the accounting firms. Very exciting for us. And I guess from our perspective, it's about working with SMEs to help them support the regulatory environment that the big corporates currently have to report into. How are we going to do that? How are we going to support that?
Hi all, I'm Paris Jordan. I am the head of responsible investing at Stanley, which is a wealth manager here in the UK. My main role at the firm is to pretty much look at anything on the horizon and ensure that our investment managers, teams, and every other department you can think of is up to speed and working through them for the benefit of our clients. Separately, my background is in investment, so I have been a sustainable ESG, impact, whatever you want to call me, investor over the years. And I look after a network across the city for other wealth management firms. And collaboratively, we feed into regulation with the FCA. So unsurprisingly, I may be talking about SDR and some of the other bits and bobs today.
Yes.
Lovely to meet you all. Gregoire Hug. I'm happy to be here. I'm CEO and founder of WeeFin. WeeFin is a fintech specialized in sustainable finance. We have, as a goal, our mission is to make sustainable finance the norm. So we are helping financial institutions developing ESG at scale, not for millions of investments, but for billions. So we've developed a technology called ESG Connect that is helping them to create an ESG golden source, access dozens of ESG data sources, and then comply to the regulation. But we want to turn them not into a constraint, but into an opportunity for them to develop their added value in the market.
Good. We're hearing already, just from the start, that there's opportunities. So that's what I like to hear. So Paris, let's start with you, because obviously, when we spoke on the phone, you have an interesting take because you've worked very closely with the regulator. So SDR, which is the latest edition, stands for Sustainable Disclosure Requirements, slightly different from the SFDR in Europe. And it comes obviously with its own challenges. But tell us a bit about the work that you've done and that you're starting to see with what's coming with SDR.
Yeah, I mean, so just to put it into kind of sense in terms of why has this piece of regulation actually occurred in the UK. Firstly, you can imagine since Brexit, we don't like to follow kind of some of the rules that are coming out of continent anymore. But as a second point to that, the UK legislator wanted to look at what was done with SFDR and think about how they could improve on it for the outcomes of clients. So they did actually go to market, and when I say go to market, they spoke to people like myself, lots of my peers, and thought about how they could make sustainability more widely understood by end clients. Now, the regime in itself is really for the retail consumer. So you've heard the term greenwashing over the last few years. You know, there's been a lot of distrust, really, that we've seen with clients around what we're telling them and actually the outcomes of that. So really, this piece of legislation is to help kind of combat that and build a bit more trust back into the marketplace. Ultimately, there's like 6 particular kind of pieces to the legislation, but the really important ones are the labels. So the labels themselves will be applied to particular funds, so collective funds that are eligible for sustainability criteria. They are, for those who haven't heard it, I'll run through, very exciting. They are sustainability improvers, sustainability focus, sustainability impact, and sustainability mixed, so a mix of the other 3. And what this means is now when an end client goes to a financial advisor, an investment manager, a fund house, if you go to Hargreaves Lansdown, whatever it might be, when you're buying a product, you can now see that there is a label that means you meet a particular hurdle. What we kept finding in the marketplace is that people were using terms like ESG, sustainability. Yep. Everyone was talking a different language, and this helps them just, you know, understand it a little bit better. That's one of the big pillars of the piece of legislation that is coming in the second half of this year, so should be very interesting for us all. One of the other pieces you already mentioned was around anti-greenwashing. Yep. You would have thought this was fairly obvious. It's just making sure that your claims are substantiated and true and honest and all of those other words the FCA always tells us to be in this particular industry. But they've had to put specific anti-greenwashing rule in place. And that means just be careful around the usage of your terms related to sustainability and impact. And just, if you are doing an approach to something, just explain what that is so that clients understand it. Now, as you can imagine, because of this piece of regulation that's come in, there's a huge amount of work going on with financial advisors, yeah, wealth managers, asset managers, that whole ecosystem, as you said earlier on, which leaves us with, firstly, a lot of work to do, but secondly, desperate for solutions. Yes. So the idea of, you know, fintech, tech in general helping us is incredibly useful, because how do you take a client from point A of let's have a conversation about sustainability through to this is the appropriate solution for you? And that's really what I'm trying to solve for day in, day out at Charles Stanley, but also more broadly with my peers in the marketplace.
Do you know what? I think the important thing that the SDR brings is there's lots of customer research behind it, like loads. It's really meant to provide the end consumer with clarity and guidance to help them achieve their goals in investment in a way that's aligned to their values and the things that are important. So speaking around customers, Lesley, you are all about the customer. So tell us a bit more about your take on these regulations.
So I come in here, I think I'm more of a rebel.
Always a rebel.
So, I mean, I know what you're thinking when you see the word regulation in the panel, right? Not again, regulation, we'll talk about it a lot. But first of all, I want to throw in a phrase to you, contrarian thinking, right at the start. A contrarian mindset, that means challenging the status quo, questioning the already accepted truth. Now think again on regulation. I know what you're thinking, say, okay, regulation is more about ticking the boxes, doing the bare minimum. Yes, you do have to comply, but there's such a bare minimum. Think higher. Now I want you to visualize with me, when it comes to approach to regulation, think about it as a pyramid. So when we talk about complying, that's the bottom of the pyramid. Think about in the ocean. What does that do? Shrimps stay at the bottom of the ocean. Take the planktons, right? That's complying. Everyone does. You're not differentiating yourself by just complying to regulations. Now I want to sell you the vision, which is the apex of that pyramid. It's talking about how do you leverage the regulations, the regulatory data to achieve the upside opportunities. That's what sharks do, right? Okay, so then now we come to the hard work, which is the middle layer. What does the middle layer do? The key word here is transparency. I'm sure every single one of you has heard of it more than 100 times. We've talked about it for over a decade, and we're still talking about it. Transparency is not done in a really down-to-earth way, in a useful way. But now let's come back to sustainable finance regulations, right? We talk about the alphabetic soup. SFDR, SDR, EU taxonomy, and how fun is that? But I want to invite you to think about, why do they exist, all these regulations? Why do they exist at the first place? If you read the first paragraph of every single regulation policy paper, it says it's really there to mobilize capital towards sustainability. Not ticking the boxes. So we're missing the point. So how do we take that opportunity or turn a burden into opportunities? So then I would invite people to start thinking a human-centric way. What I find frustrating about the financial industry after spending a decade working in banking in London is that we focus too much on data. We focus too much on products. Now, this year, we have a record number of so-called sustainable funds. And now we have endless number of sustainable data. It's easy to blame we don't have the perfect data. But it's about starting somewhere. So focusing on what can you leverage that data to do the good of your clients, whether that's retail client, whether it's high net worth individuals, or pension fund. Do something to start mobilizing their capital towards sustainability the right way, free of greenwashing. So this is what the essence of transparency that was really like. So you managed to, first of all, mobilizing capital the right way, and free of greenwashing. But yeah, because of transparency, greenwashing will have nowhere to hide. And eventually, what that does is to bring this financial equality, is really bringing that, shift the power back to the consumers where it should be.
Thank you, Lesley. Strong words. Don't swim at the bottom of the ocean. Myv, SMEs, this is all a big challenge for them. What are you seeing in this space?
So I was just thinking about Lesley's plankton experience and thinking about SMEs in that structure. And I was thinking what's really interesting is we forget about SMEs all the time.
Yeah.
Because we assume, we talk about ISSB, we talk about TCFD, and we talk about, TCFD is old news now, right? Mm-hmm. SMEs have no idea. And SMEs are the backbone of the UK's economy. The SME sector, if you like, is where all the scope 3s of the big corporates hang out.
Yep.
SMEs have no idea. They get forms from banks, they get forms that say if you don't fill this in, you don't get this contract. They've got no resource, they've got no information. They don't know what this means, they don't know what that means, but they fill the form in, right? And the form goes into the big corporate, and they put it into their form and put it into their box, whatever, and start reporting this stuff. And that's the stuff that's in the middle of this pyramid, right? That's the stuff that is forming the backbone of the sustainability data we have in the UK at the moment. And if you think about the SMEs we have, so my clients every day that I work with, who don't know all this, what one thing means from another, they put the data together, but they haven't got resource, they haven't got people that can help them understand it. Where do we start? Do we help them by taking contracts away? Do we help them by taking finance away? Or do we take away this survival of the fittest? I know that that's what sharks do. But do we take away this structure of, if you don't know what these words mean, you can't come to the party? Or do we sit down and work with them so that we, as a country, move the veracity of our data forwards? I say don't forget about the SMEs. They're a super important part of every structure, but we don't bring them into the conversation.
Strong. Gregoire?
Yep, I think I'm going to try to wrap up a bit like the three different angles that we saw here. So on our side, we have helped financial institutions work with financial regulation and sustainability regulation for the past couple of years. We are based in Paris. You probably noticed that with my accent, slight accent, and in Europe as well. And actually, we saw that there's two different kinds of regulations. First ones are prescriptive, typically the taxonomy or the anti-greenwashing rule. And the other ones would be more an incentive. It should be SFDR and SDR in some way. It's a bit in the middle. The incentive regulations will just tell you to publish, and then will let the market decide what is sustainable or not.
Yeah.
And our lesson from Europe is actually the first type of regulation do not work. If you look at the taxonomy, for example, we've made a survey on our side on the 100 top investment funds in Europe that try to comply with the regulation. The one that has the strongest ambition toward taxonomy wanted to be aligned 5% of their total investment. All that work for 5%, and guess what? They failed. They ended up with 4.5%. So 4.5% of alignment to the taxonomy for dozens of years of discussion. And actually, SFDR worked best, but you can expect a bit the same thing in the UK with the SDR regulation that will work in two different steps. First, people are going to try to comply with the regulation, and it's going to be a mess. 90% of the time of my clients was spent on complying with the regulation last year rather than building more product. And in a second time, well, the markets try to read the document, and then you end up with a better sustainability market. People are trying to compare different funds, different products, different kind of companies, and then because they have a common framework, start to invest in what's the best. So I'm pretty optimistic that SDR and the rules that are coming in place in the UK will create a strong framework so that the competition can start, not end.
I love that. So to wrap up then, just very conscious of the time, what we'll do is final thoughts. Competition is about to start. We should definitely look at, transparency. Greenwashing is a given. We definitely need to make sure that we are doing this right for and by consumers. Don't forget about the SMEs.
Don't forget the SMEs.
Please don't forget the SMEs. And don't eat the plankton. Yes.
Have a contrarian mindset and be the shark.
Perfect. So please help me in giving a round of applause to our panelists, please.